Well, hello everyone. We are making our debut, here on YouTube, giving it a shot. Eric up here in Wisconsin,
In Houston, welcome to the Dukes
Mr. Tim
show,
Mott.
that is.
Yep. So we're giving this a go, see how it works out. I'm excited. I'm already excited about getting possibly a better quality image out of our stream. Twitch just limits you there, so it's nice to get a much better quality, stream.
Are we doing YouTube and Twitch, or is it just the digs on YouTube now?
Just the digs on YouTube for today, for tonight.
Uh,
Eventually, I could.
cool.
Eventually, I
So,
think you can get
Twitch,
it
you
both.
can't hear us.
Yeah, Twitch can't hear us tonight, so. But
That's too bad.
but eventually maybe. But right now, this is a good place to start. So
This is a good place to start. Yeah. So, do you like my long, luxurious COVID hair?
I've noticed that. I actually noticed that a few, earlier. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting one.
It keeps getting longer and longer.
You're not cutting it?
Well, I don't trust myself to cut it in such a way that it would look better than this horrid mess that's on my head right now. And we are still playing it safe enough that I'm not going to public barbers.
Oh really?
My wife is threatened to get. She's promised actually to get a friend to come over and do it in the backyard, but that has not materialized yet. So currently, my hair is still at the length of the Nile. So there you go.
Well, maybe there's barbers that come to your house.
I'm sure there are. I just need to find one, and I've been too busy.
Nah, I'm just saying.
Hey, too busy. How have you been? You been busy?
Yeah, a little busy. So, this week has been a little nuts. Like, had a funeral come up this week, so I had to, help out with that and live stream that, and just been helping our church and school out with their live streaming needs, just kind of educating and pointing people in the right direction there. And yeah, that was, that's taking up a lot of my time as far as that. On top of, my normal everyday duties like, watching the kids and, making sure they're fed and stuff like that, making sure their homeschool stuff is done. So,
Just the important things.
Exactly. So, but I enjoy all of it. So it's not doesn't feel like work sometimes. So
that's good. But when you're live streaming for church, are you using mostly YouTube or some other thing? Or?
Yes, but with the school, they're really trying to find a safe environment type thing, and they're just not. And I understand how people may not be crazy about what do you call it, YouTube, and how you can. I think some people say you're 3 clicks away from inappropriate content or something.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it's like, so I get that. So I think they're looking at possibly Zoom or something. So they've been trying that out. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm
interesting.
But I've been helping out. I'm just making sure it's been happening over the last couple weeks, and now they're starting to take it on themselves and kind of make it their own. If you catch my meaning. So
excellent. So, you're like the jump starter catalyst for them.
Yeah, just make sure it happens. Make sure it's going, and then now it's like, hey, so other people can step in and help. We've already got some volunteers helping out, so it's awesome.
Yeah, get a kid on Zoom, and they can have a class for a day, but teach them how to Zoom, and they will be lifelong learners.
Exactly.
Wait, that's not how that goes. I don't know. So yeah, it's a mystery. The Dig Show.
So, but I think our goal for today was we were gonna try to do mysteries or something. We like to have something at least to anchor us, and I think we're shooting towards
what
mystery
planning, like actually having a topic. I thought we just talked.
No, we usually talk and we ramble and we go off on our streams of consciousness, as they say. But for tonight, we were trying for a plan. So.
Okay, well, as long as we can still fall back on your mailbag if we need to, because
I can
like
always pull it up.
You pick up
it will be very, very interesting stuff like science related things and whatnot. So
I like science related things. Okay, so just as long as we don't get away from that completely, I'll be happy.
Yeah, and I'll lead into it. I'm like, you picked out this movie. It's specifically, we talked about a movie that you wanted me to watch. I hadn't seen it.
I really liked it. I really liked it, so I want everybody to watch it.
I pushed back on it a little bit because it's one of those movies that it's just headlined by all these big names, and it's just kind of like, I don't want to support all these famous actors and stuff in this movie. These are all really big names. I mean, they've all of them have probably either led a movie or been the
Hmm.
lead of a movie, and yet they're all doing their own. They're all in
I
this
know.
movie together, and I'm
Do
like,
you know
this just
my
feels like an
favorite?
ego trip, but it's not. It's actually well done.
It's really well done. My favorite example of that is Frank Oz, co-creator of The Muppets, the voice of Fozzie Bear, Miss Piggy, the voice of Yoda. He has a bit part in this. He shows up for like 2 scenes, and that's it.
Which
He's
scene
the
was that? I
lawyer.
don't know who he is. Is
He,
he
he's
the like
he,
the
he's the
computer
lawyer
guy?
reading the will.
Oh,
No,
he's
he's
the
the lawyer
lawyer. Oh,
reading the will. Yeah,
wow.
that's Frank Oz. Isn't
I
that
didn't know
crazy?
that.
Like a big name, huge name. Like the guy who played Yoda is showing up in like this tiny role.
He was Yoda?
Frank Oz, yeah, he's the
I
voice of
didn't
Yoda.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that, man. See, I'd
You
learn
never
something.
noticed that? You never noticed the similarity between Yoda and Miss Piggy?
No, at no point did I hear in this movie did I hear him go, must be one or
No,
something. I mean,
no. He used completely normal voice. Like I did. I was
yeah.
like, I had to go since I never really have seen too many pictures of him. I actually had to go look up. I saw Frank Oz was in this movie, but what was he? So I had to go look it up, and he was the lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So funny.
I wouldn't have
So
expected
funny.
that. I would not have expected that. So
Yeah.
it was more the
So,
fact that all these leads came together to do this movie. I was pretty impressed with.
mhm.
I was like,
It
okay.
was
I
yeah.
mean, except for the female character, the female
Is that what
lead. I'd never seen her before. I'm sure she was in something, but
yeah. But isn't that what they call an ensemble cast or something like that?
something. You got to do something to make sure everyone gets along because it's like some people are real big on being the lead, and yeah, it's like you're all kind of the lead. It's an ensemble. We're all working together. It's like an orchestra. It's like, well, isn't that every movie? Like, but
Mhm.
they're like, yeah, more so
Yeah.
this. But I was really
It
impressed
kind
with
of
the
kind of
cast,
fit
though.
though. It kind of fit because of the nature of all of the characters. Like every character had a huge ego, except for the person who was at the center of it all.
Hmm. Though I'm gonna start critiquing it right now, though. I mean, and a lot of these we've already
Spoiler,
mentioned this before.
spoiler. We gotta put out a spoiler alert
Yeah, and I put it in the
because
description too.
okay, because this is a mystery,
Yeah,
and this is super fun to watch if you don't know what's going to happen next.
yeah,
I watched it twice, and it's also fun to watch if you do know what's going to happen next, but you don't want to miss out that first time of
yeah,
not knowing the ending. And
yeah.
so
And I
we're
will
going to be talking about plot points.
and I will say I went most of the movie not knowing where it was going, and that's a pretty impressive point. It was really hard for me to not mention this before the show started, but it was like I was really impressed with how much it had me jumping. Usually, I can pick out who is, you know, who's the guilty party, pretty much right up, not right up front, but usually given about halfway or a third through, I can usually pick out who the person is. And what I didn't understand was they kept misdirecting and doing
Mhm.
this, backwards and forwards and flipping and spiraling it around. And I'm like, huh? It kept me jumping. So at first you're like, well, you know, okay, I thought that's where we were going, but then you're like going off on this tangent and that tangent, and I'm like, it
Mhm.
really kept me,
Mhm.
jumping up until the end. I was pretty impressed. I mean, that's good directing and good writing, I guess, too. You know,
Really good
um,
writing.
so I mean, it was pretty well made. It's a little goofy. I mean, there were some things that I'm kind of like, come on, seriously.
It's a lot goofy.
Yeah.
I love it.
So,
I love it.
so
So it's so clever. I think it pulled off its premise really, really well.
yeah,
But so the thing that really got me about it is that it really manages. It's a good mystery because it manages well who knows what when. I don't think. I'm guessing. I don't think you could figure out the real mystery until they tell you at the very end. Like there's clues and you can put them
yeah,
together and the mystery makes sense, but they don't give you everything. It's not like an Agatha Christie novel where everything's there and you can come up with a solution before you get to the end.
Mm.
It's possible to guess, and I think I did guess like who was going to be like the real bad guy.
Mm.
I couldn't guess how though. I was like,
Mm.
oh, well, because of the way they introduced him, clearly this one makes the most sense to be the bad guy. But then they make you like him through most of the movie, and I'm like, it's gotta turn. I know it's gotta be him. But what's weird, and this is where the spoilers come in. So turn it off now if you don't want to know the mystery. They tell you early on who did it.
Yeah.
Like she just confesses. She's like, it was my fault.
Yeah.
And you know that, and the victim knows that, and she knows that, but the detective does not know that, and none of the other characters know that. And so you think that the mystery is about her, and no, you think it's no longer a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know. And so you think it's going to be about her trying to not get caught for what was really an accidental, death.
Yeah.
But then you find out it's really a murder, but then you find out it's not a murder.
Yeah, I just before we go too far into it though, I'm just gonna say, I mean, I was pretty impressed with how they deflected it at the beginning. I mean, the hardest part is as you progress, like what you're talking about, as you progress through this, is like how do you prevent it from people really catching on or giving away too much. And there's so many characters that it's like as soon as she's starting to interact with one person, they introduce a new character, and you're like, okay, they bring you on a tangent there, and then they bring you on a tangent here. And they introduce a new character, and they bring a tangent. I was really impressed with the method in which they were moving the story forward without giving away too much, because everyone's trying to find that little bit, like the Agatha Christie, like you're talking about, or in grabbing that one piece of information. Oh, I know it now because now I have the information. You really don't have all the information about, where the story's going until the end.
Yep.
And I don't really want to be harsh about it, but it's like it's not really, in the end, it's like not really what you think it's gonna be. And I'm like,
so it's not one that you're supposed to figure out.
mm-hmm.
It's a movie. It's not a book.
Yeah.
You just sit back and you let the movie tell you what you know.
Yeah.
You accept what comes at you.
Yeah.
And it takes you on a ride. It's a fun ride.
Yeah, but
it's different. It's different than a book, where with a book you're trying to reason with it. Mm-hmm. You stop and you go back and you go forward and you put pieces together as you're going through it until you get to the end.
Mm-hmm. We should go over some of the silly things, because this movie is all about, they introduce silly things as a distraction and to actually, they're actually very important, plot points, but some are just a little ridiculous. Like the main character, spoiler, and that's just not really even a spoiler as much as it is just it's a weird quirk of this character. It's like apparently she has to throw up if she lies. I'm like, how is that even a thing? Like what?
Yeah, you just accept that happens. So
I was like, y'all couldn't come up with something better. I mean, as a writer, I was like, y'all couldn't come up with anything better. How is that?
No.
How is that?
It's great. It's great. They played it perfectly, because that's two things.
It was done well.
2 things for the movie. So the first thing that it does is it shows you when she's lying and when she's not, and then they also twist that at one point, by delaying it.
Yeah.
So that you think she's telling the truth.
Actually. Yeah, a couple times. Yeah, and I
right,
agree.
Yeah, you're right. You got in the car too. Then
they
also,
hide it.
Because she throws up when she lies, that also makes it a dramatic kind of movie. Movies are about making emotions, and so that makes it a certain emotion at the right time. So if it had been something else, like her face turns yellow when she lies, I mean that wouldn't have had the same effect, except for the knowledge aspect of it. So
people were looking for that tell. They're always looking for that tell of how is that person lying, and they basically gave it away in this beginning. They're like, okay, this person's tell is just super obvious. They throw up. Like what?
Mm-hmm.
They don't throw up. That's their tell. Like
So it's
wow, that's
impossible for that one to lie.
yeah, and you're not
Well,
really
okay,
gonna miss it
so
either. It's not like someone's gonna look away and be like, oh, they touched their eye or they touched their nose when they're lying, like or they pull their ear. Like no, that's not it. We're gonna go full bore and we're gonna be like, this person lies. They throw up on screen. Okay.
I actually thought of a third thing that accomplishes. What that does is that that sets up the whole dilemma because you know that she's the one that has to cover up
Yeah.
what she's done, but she's also the one who can't lie.
Agreed.
So
She's the one that you're always looking for, the suspicious one, and she's obviously the one acting suspicious because she can't hide it. So you're obviously drawn to that character to really focus on that character as the guilty one. So I agree with you. Like,
well, there's also another thing that the movie's doing that's different, but there's a subtext of class kind of consciousness of not really a subtext. It's more like on the surface, but she's the only one without the ego.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone else has a huge ego. It's all about them. They're this rich family that's been kind of parasitic on the genius grandfather who's the one that earned the money and has been taking care of them all. And she's his nurse. She's an immigrant, and they all say, "Oh, we're going to treat you like part of the family, and you're so nice to be around here with us, and you're taking care of Grandpa so well." But when it comes down to it, they ignore her, they demean her, they accuse her of stealing their inheritance, and so that's a strong thing in there. But she's the one without the ego, so we as the audience like her because she's a likable character. The others don't suspect her because they overlook her. They're like, oh, she doesn't means nothing until the will is read and she's the one that inherits everything. Then they all turn on her.
Mm-hmm. It's like I'll build on that too. It's like it's basically like it's very similar to some of the older British shows that you see on the BBC. I think what's that show on there that was real popular?
Broadchurch.
No, not the. It was basically it was a more recent one, but it was like really popular recently. But basically, it built on class. You had the servants, and you had the the leader of the house. About Downton Abbey. Thank you. And it's just like that. It's like it built on that, but it's like they were trying to build a parallel with current, within current society, but yet a parallel within an American culture. And I guess the only comparison there is immigrants to, I guess people who've been in America for a while. And I'm like, okay. And I mean, I kind of saw a parallel there they were trying to build because, I mean, most Americans, in my opinion, don't think the way some of these characters were talking, like as far as, they were talking like the way they were talked like someone in one of these British shows talking about a servant class. But in this one, I just wasn't. I was like, I don't think Americans think that way. They had a really nice conversation that I thought was a real good, interesting distraction given cultural issues right now about immigrants and politics. Without naming names, they were talking about the political environment right now, and I thought that was a really interesting little segue into what families talk about. They often have arguments and on politics and stuff like that during family events. I was like, it was a pretty interesting, like these little things that really made you feel like it was a family arguing or fighting and stuff like that. It was they did a lot of good character building in it. So.
Yeah, all about those characters. And again, I think that thing that it did so well, managing what you know and when you know it, is one of the things that made it such a good mystery movie to watch. Another book that does that really well is Dracula, actually. So I've been listening to this podcast feed, a podcast called Phoebe Reads a Mystery, and she's been reading classic mysteries. She started off with some Agatha Christie, and then she did The Moonstone, and did.
I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, that was one of them, and then she started to do Dracula, and I was like, Dracula as a mystery? Why would this be a mystery? Right. But then I thought about it, and it really is, because in the first 3 chapters, you get to learn everything pretty much through Jonathan Harker's diary about Dracula and his plans. Like, you know what he's going to be doing, you know how he's going to be doing it, you know what he is, and then it goes back to England, and it drops you in there, and none of the characters have any idea what's coming. And what you are doing is you're watching them put the pieces together slowly, piece by piece. And there's so many times when they make a mistake because they don't know what you know. And so they're figuring out the mystery while you know what the mystery is. And so you're interpreting the thing that they're seeing in one way, and they're interpreting it in another way, or overlooking it. And then they make this huge mistake and like, no, that was so obvious. You should have seen that, but they couldn't because they didn't know. And so that's one thing about a mystery is it manages what you know and when you know it. Another great one is another Agatha Christie. Have you read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd?
No.
Okay. Now,
I'm not. I'll be honest. I'm not as much into mysteries.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and give a blanket spoiler alert for all Agatha Christie's right now, because if you want to be surprised, they're old books by this point. So if you want to be surprised by an Agatha Christie, stop listening. Okay. So she's got
plenty of time to read them.
Yeah, you've had plenty of time to read them since the 40s. So she's got one where all of the people die. She's got one where all of the people are the murderers. She's got one where I think the victim frames somebody and kills himself. And then she's got one where the detective is the murderer. So when I got to The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, I knew on page 1 who it was going to be, because it was written in the first person. I'm like, oh, well, she's done so many tricks. Clearly the narrator is going to be the murderer. But I didn't know how she was going to pull it off. And so I'm reading them. Wow, this is really good. I don't see any way that this guy could have done it. And I get to the last chapter, and I'm like, surely it has to be him, but I still can't figure out how. And I get to like the last 2 pages, and I'm like, no, it's not him. Really, it's this other guy. And then I turn to the very last page, the last page of the book, and I'm still second guessing myself, and it turns out to be the narrator. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It just drives me nuts. It's really, really. That's what makes a good mystery.
I think a lot of people really enjoy a good mystery. And I will say, as someone who will watch movies and want to know kind of, I can usually read, like, I think all I had to do was watch the commercial for, I think, Magnolia Skies or something, that movie that I think Tom, what's his name? I don't know.
Cruise?
The short famous guy. I don't know.
Short famous guy? Tom Petty?
Tom Cruise. But ultimately, all I had to do was watch the commercial for that to figure out. I knew everything from the beginning to the end, and I was like, I've had friends that are just like, how do you figure that out just by watching the commercial? I'm like, all you have to do is look at, how they're doing the movie, what is being portrayed within the commercial, and you can pretty much figure out. You're gonna obviously miss some of the development things, but you can usually tell where they're going with it or what's happening. So it's like, I enjoy not being able to figure it out. This one had me jumping all the way to the end. I felt that way about this one, about this one. I'm drawing a blank on this one that we just
Knives Out.
It was like this one kept me jumping up until the end, because I was like, I wasn't really sure. They kept using misdirection. I think in some cases directors or writers will get lazy and they'll be like, I don't want to keep doing misdirection every 5 minutes. It's exhausting and it takes a lot of effort. But it's like on a movie, it's like, you have a lot more time, and I think they're just able to just really hide the facts. And this one,
when you say misdirection, what are you thinking of?
When I say misdirection, it's like it's really just leading people down a false path. They introduce a character and they want you to have suspicion of this character, and they bring you down a path to think that it might be that character. Then they introduce a new character, and then they lead you down a false path on whether or not that's the culprit. And then they introduce another one, and then that's basically the gist of it. But in between that, they do plot development and stuff like that interesting conversation in politics that they injected into the thing, which I thought was really neat because it's a great distraction. Right now, people are super distracted with politics, and as soon as they injected, just they didn't even go into anything, so you couldn't get upset about what they were talking about because they left out all the pertinent information. But they were talking
Mhm.
about politics, and because it's so polarizing right now, it gets you distracted. So it's not a person, but it's a thing that got you distracted down another path. Was politics a thing in this? It was like they did a lot of distractions, and
The baseball on the desk distracted me a lot.
I
I was like,
know
okay, picked up the baseball, threw it out the window. Then the dog takes the baseball and he runs that way. And it's like, what's this
yeah,
with this baseball? The detective looks at it. It never means anything. It
exactly.
does lead to one thing right at the very end, but it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's like I agree. It's the exact same thing. It's like I was like, it was another distraction. I was trying to feel. You know what I was thinking when I saw that one part was I'm a big
Mhm.
Deep Space Nine fan of Star Trek,
Oh
and
yeah, Cisco.
on Cisco's desk he has a baseball, and I'm like, someone in that show was a baseball fan or a Star Trek fan, and they put that baseball right on that desk to like honor like Cisco or something like that. I mean, that's how I take that. That was a Cisco thing. Someone put a baseball on this guy's desk just to distract people. I was just like that
Hmm.
one. That one I take as a Deep Space Nine. You know, what do you call it? Homage right there.
Homage, yeah.
Homage.
Yeah,
So
so we could talk style of movie too. This Knives Out, I like I like the almost sarcastic style of it. Like
hmm
just the camera shots and the lighting and the sets are
hmm
just they're really kind of over the top dramatic and melodramatic.
but
And
not too bad. But
they
not too bad. I mean, sometimes they
well,
can be
no,
a
but
little much. But this one I thought was well done. I agree with you.
Well, well done in the good way. It's a good
hmm
effect,
Agree.
and they make that work in the story because this is a mystery writer, Harlan Thrombey, who it's his $60 million house or whatever, and he's filled it up
Fortune.
with things like weirdo curiosities from that are featured in all of his novels. And
hmm
so one of the detectives that's working on the case is a fan, and so through him we get to learn, oh, that was in this novel, and oh, that was in this novel. And
hmm
so his house is really weird like that. But it lends this atmosphere, almost of sarcasm and silliness
hmm
to just when you look at it. You don't even have to know what's going on, um, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's
hmm
really silly.
Yeah. I mean, I thought even and I mean this. I don't want to do too many spoilers right now, but what I thought was interesting is at the end, I never felt like they answered one of the pivotal questions, and they
Which one?
never answered that question. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And it's just like there's actually almost three different major plot points, and one is the murder.
Mm-hmm.
One is who the murderer is, and the other one
Mm-hmm.
is what are they doing about the inheritance?
Mm.
You know, and you know,
Well, she keeps it. She keeps it.
does she?
Of course she does. The last
What
shot.
the last? Yeah, but the last shot, the
My house, my
the
rules, my coffee.
yeah. I'm like, so it's like all they're doing is she's sitting there and they turn the ball back like, okay, now we still got to deal with this. I mean, that's been handled. Now we got to deal with this. So it's like, okay.
I think she kept it because they don't have a legal leg to stand on, and they've shown their true colors. And the most beautiful thing that the main detective calls attention to a couple times is that she's a good person, and she outsmarts all of the plots that are against her,
Mm-hmm.
because she doesn't play by those rules. She plays as a good person.
Mm-hmm.
It's set up really well in the beginning. The scene, she's the nurse and she takes care of the old guy, and they play Go with the game, with the black
Which
and white pebbles that you
is that
stones
also
that you put
called?
down.
No, that's not. Never mind.
Hmm?
Yeah, I
Oh,
just know it's a
so
popular game, and it's like I've heard of it. I've never played it though.
It's like a classic super strategy game from the
Y-
East. It's
yeah, and it's basically it's kind of like a parallel to chess. Anyone who plays chess apparently is really good at strategy, and apparently that was another one of those little things that they talk about. It's like you suspect her, because she plays this Go game, and that's really a deep game. So
right. So the thing is, the mystery writer, he's a brilliant strategist because he can come up with these plots just out of nowhere. But there are two people that can beat him at Go, and this is kind of shorthand in the movie for able to think of deep plots. And so the nurse is one of them. She beats him, and then the black sheep of the family, the grandson who's a troublemaker, he can also beat him. And so there's a scene where the mystery writer and the nurse are playing Go, and he's like, "How do you always beat me?" And she says, "Because I'm not playing to win, I'm playing to make beautiful patterns." And that is how she beats him. Now, I don't know if that's an actual good strategy to Go, but for the movie, that's work. And that's the metaphor for how she manages to outwit this plot, because the real murderer, who tried to be a murderer but failed, she outsmarts him twice by instinct. Once by finding the correct medicine when he switched them, and second time by saving the life of the person, by trying to save the life of the person he intended to kill. Both of which he had planned on her not doing, which if she had acted like the rest of the family, she wouldn't have done. But because she's a good person, she outsmarted him by instinct without even knowing it.
Yeah, what I thought was confusing, about 30 minutes or maybe 40 minutes in, they basically tell you what happens. And that confused me beyond belief.
So
because I looked down, I'm like, dude, I'm only 40 minutes into this. This is like a 2.5-hour movie. What in the world are we going to do for 2 hours? You've already told us what happened. And I'm like, what is going on? It's like there's gotta be some kind of other plot point, but it's obvious what happens.
So deep. Goes so deep.
Well, I mean, this was the confusing part. There was his murder, but the thing is they kind of had, we're already throwing spoilers out there. There was a second murder, and that's really what pulled it in. It was basically murder, and what's happening with the the inheritance. And I'm like, okay. I mean, these are almost really like different shows. Like, and they just they were like, okay, let's take this idea and let's take this idea and let's kind of meld them together. They'll be loosely connected here and here, but it's like it was really almost like two shows in one. And it's like the third I'm counting as like what they're doing with the inheritance. That was one of the threads they left untethered. They never said what they were gonna do. They left it open to interpretation. As far as
what you're describing, they actually the detective, the private detective, actually said that. He's like, there is, and he's got this thick Kentucky accent or whatever, Virginia accent, and he said, there's this donut that's where there's a missing hole right in the middle.
I found that so funny when he said that.
It was funny because he takes like 30 seconds or 45 seconds to talk about this analogy that he stretches way too far. This donut where we're missing, there's a piece of information missing right in the middle. But when we get that information, now we find that there's a hole in that donut. So it's a donut hole in the donut's hole.
Yeah.
But there's a little hole inside the donut. So it's more like a donut inside the donut. And so
I was like, wow.
And that's exactly what you were just saying, because there are multiple parts and they're putting them together. And he's like missing the pieces right there.
Yep.
But they figured it out.
Yeah, he was an interesting character. You can play the inspector so many different ways, and I feel like they played him almost 3 different ways. They played him as like the mysterious guy at the beginning. They played him almost as a I'm trying to think here, as the expert, the mysterious. He was mysterious at the beginning. He was kind of on foot right around the middle. Right after that, he almost was playing the buffoon. He was like he played as a buffoon as well. And then near the end, I've got it. I am you know,
He puts it all together.
yeah, he's just like, I got it, and he's the genius. He's I found the donut inside the donut, like kind of explanation, like I want to say
Well,
Shakespeare, but that's not what I mean. I
yeah.
mean the other guy. What's the other show that you're watching?
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes. He's like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
He was like
Right.
there at the end. So it was interesting to see the development of that character, because I'll be honest, I never really trusted that character very much either, because I'm like, who is this guy?
Oh, no.
Why is he even in this show? I mean, at the beginning, I was like, what? Who is this guy? Why is he even here? And that's everyone asked that. I thought that was a great approach at the end, because all the family is interrogating him, like, why is this guy here? So.
Yeah. He actually, you have to have that character, because you have to have someone reveal it at the end. And the director didn't have a voice in this. Like, there wasn't really some omniscient voice that was speaking only to the audience. So you had to have him speaking to the other characters. And it's a classic trope anyway, to have the detective that puts it all together. But you couldn't have the girl do it, because that wouldn't sound right coming from her. You couldn't have the bad guy do it with an evil monologue, because this wouldn't work coming from him. None of the other characters earned that. And so having the detective there is kind of the guy who fills in the hole in the middle. That works. And you talk, I see what you're saying about the way they played him at the three different parts of the movie, like going from mysterious to expert to buffoon. And it's not like it was jarring or anything. It flowed very nicely. I think he had one kind of character all the way through that tied all that together.
Yeah, I agree. It seemed like he was the same character, but it was like at certain parts, it's almost like, well, he wasn't paying as close attention. It was like in this part, he wasn't paying as close attention. So then it's like he was kind of a buffoon character, but he wasn't. He was still right there. As soon as someone jarred him out of his, his complacency, he was like, okay, I need to be paying attention here.
Okay, but that's also an act, the character's part, because they reveal right at the very end when she says, "When did you first suspect me?" And he points out, "You've had blood on your shoe this whole time."
Yeah.
And so he knew from the very moment that he met her that she had something to do with it.
Mm-hmm. How she misses that when you put your shoes on every day, I have no idea.
Well, it's just a tiny little spot.
Yeah, but it's right next to the laces. It's a big white shoe.
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, I just thought that one was a little over the top, but I did.
It was.
But they even gave that away early enough in the show. They even mentioned it early in the show, and I'm like, okay.
But they didn't let you know that the detective saw it.
Yeah, I thought in near the end, I thought he was going when he was asking, when did you know, or something like that, or why'd you suspect me, or something, or when did you first suspect me? He went for her foot or for her leg, but at first I thought he was going for a tick, like it was like she shakes her leg or something when she's lying, like it was another tell, but it wasn't. That wasn't it. Her tell is that she throws up or whatever. Yeah, and it was like, but that was the distraction, because at some point in the past they meant show her shaking her leg, a little uncontrollably.
She's nervous.
Yeah. Exactly. So there was these are one of these little paths that they send you down, these little misdirections, and they were just done really well in this one, to where I was not able to figure it out until the very end, and I was like, okay, I kind of get where they're going from with all this. And when they start what I would consider the second act, when they start introducing the the actual who is going to be a killer, then when they start that second act, it's like it starts to come together. It's almost like that was the movie, but yet they added this whole big long thing onto the front as really good misdirection. So
yeah, absolutely.
But I thought that was really well done in the second half.
So when you back it up and you figure out like what actually happened in sequence when, you realize that the murderer tried to kill the guy by switching the medicines. Mm-hmm. But then the nurse, because she instinctively chose the medicine, she picked up the right one in the wrong bottle and gave it to him. But she thought that she gave him the wrong medicine because it was in the wrong bottle, and the other guy had taken the antidote.
I
And
didn't
so,
believe. I'll be honest. When he said that, I'm like, what? I didn't believe that
because
for a
you're a good
second.
nurse.
Go ahead.
Come on.
Now,
Thematically, because she's a good nurse.
yeah,
That's why she.
you
Refused.
knew.
But
I'm not sure
but
that would
what
fly in
happened?
a hospital, though. That's
Because
all I'm gonna
she
say.
okay,
What? This
but
one
because
weighs right. This one's the right weight. I'm like, what?
but because she got them mixed up, she gave him the right medicine, but she thought she gave him the wrong medicine. She told him he's going to die in 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
so they set up this plot so that she's not implicated because he likes her and doesn't want her to get blamed for it, and so he ends up killing himself, thinking that he was poisoned.
Yeah, and I'll bring it back to the beginning a little bit too. Here's another little misdirection that confused me up until the end. They dropped little bits, but I don't know if you caught it in the beginning. At some point, she calls him abuelo, and I was like, that confused me. I watch these shows with subtitles on, and at some point when she's talking to him, she calls him abuelo, and I'm like, abuelo, and I was like, that stuck in my brain, and I'm like, okay, so that meant that there might be more an actual literal connection between those two. So,
but there's not.
There's
No.
not. Another misdirection
like,
that they kept throwing at us.
Yeah, but it's like no, that's like Jesus said. Who is my brother and sister, but he who does my commandments. So, is it your actual family, your real family, or is it the people who act like your family that are your real family? Yep. That's the question. The family that hates each other and they're all knives out trying to kill each other, are they the actual family? But they're not acting like a family.
I concur.
And the outsider, the immigrant who came in, who's only connected through her good heart, good works, she ends up being the head of the family.
Yep. Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I haven't put it in those words before, but yeah, I like that framing right there. Yeah, she's the new head of the family, the Micah.
So the opening shot with the mug that says "My cup, my house, my rules, my coffee." She's holding that one at the end because it's now her house.
If you're a good person, you're gonna take care of the family. Like, okay.
Meek shall inherit the earth. There's another biblical connection if you want to tie it in there.
What I thought interesting, yeah, exactly. That's another good one. What I also liked was the fact that there's more money at play than they actually say. They had to come up with a number, and they didn't. I think if you play it too big, it's a little over the top. But it was kind of like I think we've mentioned before, like what's his name, Walter, Bill Watterson or something. I have his books on.
Oh yeah.
I have his books on about how he does not commercialize his stuff. He basically sells his books, and that's it. And that was basically one of the premises of this movie, was that these are books, but he refused to make movies out of them. And basically his fortune's a few $1 million, but there's a lot more money there if they just monetize those into movies. And that was one of the plot points during the movie, was Netflix or something wanted to do that. This is an Amazon show, which I thought was funny. Netflix is mentioned within Amazon. I was like, dude, you should redo that line and do it like Amazon. Someone at Amazon was like, can y'all redo this and just say Amazon instead? That conversation was had. And you're like, come on, can you change that to Amazon Prime or something? And you're like, no, we're not doing that. I'm like, okay. I had to ask. But it's like, yeah, that was one of the plot points. So that you're talking a few, I don't know movies, but you're talking what, not 100 million, but you're talking maybe 10, 20 million, at least on each book, maybe on something like that. And if you're saying, it's 60 million, however many books he had, you're talking multiples of 10, 20 million a piece. That 60 million that they're originally talking about is easily in the half $500 million or something like that, 500 million or something like that. It's a big number at that point. So there was also this expectation, which was really neat, that they would set the bar kind of low, but yet the benefit of getting his resources, getting the benefit of his estate, not even so much the money, but getting the asset of his books and knowledge there, that just would make it that much more profitable for that person, which I thought was interesting. So.
Yep. And that's all explained by Frank Oz.
Yeah. I love it. There's
So
a
much.
line in there where someone's just like, "You're worthless," and he's like, "Thank you," and I'm leaving. I was like,
Finally.
it's like, but because they make it very obvious that it's daytime when he's there, but by the time he leaves, it is pitch black outside. There's how they did that. I thought that was interesting photography or interesting videography, whatever you want to call it. But it was like it
Yeah.
was nice and bright outside, but at nighttime there were no lights in this house. It was candles, so you could see obviously that it was super dark outside. They made it very obvious that it was dark outside, and this guy had been there for hours
With his
talking to
sleeves
this
rolled.
family.
And the
Yeah,
whole family is like texting, trying to Googling, like, well, what if this, how can we get this money back from her? What about this rule? What about this rule? And he's like, no, the will was acceptable.
hmm
There's nothing wrong with it legally.
yeah. It is what it is. But yet at that scene, they start giving people information about how they can start thinking about it. That's when they started teasing like how you could get the this whole thing overturned by if the this
If you
happened or
kill the
this
victim, you
if
don't get your
yeah,
inheritance.
if you
Yeah.
kill the victim, or they were going over like 3 or 4 different options of how they could do this, how the will could get voided, and they found a couple of good ones, and one of them is what that ends up being the case, or is another kind of misdirection that they send you down. So it was pretty impressive. So I mean, I'm always impressed by a movie that doesn't I can't guess it within the first 20 minutes or the first half hour. If I can't guess it by then, you're doing a pretty good job of keeping me entertained. It's like that
You
was
know,
worth it.
and you know who directed this one?
No,
Ryan Johnson.
why does that sound
The
familiar?
same guy who did The Last Jedi.
Oh goodness
The
gracious!
Star
don't tell me
Wars
that.
Episode 8 that everyone hated also did Knives Out.
He should stick with murder mysteries. Star Wars is not his thing.
No, I can see the connection.
People have, and that's not meant to be mean. It's like, dude, some people are good at certain things. Dude, you're good at this. Star Wars, no, man, that's not your cup of tea. Stay away from it. Some people just want to do it, for some reason or another. They have a reason. They're like, oh, Star Wars, I want to do that one. No, dude, stick with this kind of stuff. If you're better at it, stick with what you're good at. And this is one of
Okay,
those
okay.
situations.
I think Disney saw him for an original thinker, which apparently he is, and they recognized that Force Awakens was way too derivative. Sorry, JJ, but there was no originality there. It was boring.
Mm-hmm.
And so they bring Ryan Johnson in to add some innovation. He does, and everyone flips out.
Yeah.
I mean, they brought him in to do a job, and he did it. And then we're like, why are you getting on his case? It's not a bad movie. It didn't really fit with the tone of everything else, but that's because they wanted him to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did.
Yep. And I'm like,
Anyway,
I'm like, but you have to know your limits, though. To me, you have to know your limits. And I'm like, and there are certain actors, and I remember reading up on one, and I don't know him that well. I'm trying to see if I can find a picture, but it's not, or trying to find the videography on it. But it was like Spider-Man: Far From Home. The villain in that movie. I'm trying to pull it up right now. No, but it's like I should probably look it up on IMDb. That's gonna have everyone on it. But it's mainly the it's like Spider-Man: Far From Home. Here it is, IMDb. And I'm like, there's a specific character, like an actor. And where's the crew? Here we go, full cast. I want to go over this because it's pertinent to me. And I'm like,
sure.
Here it is. I think it's Jake. Yeah, Jake
Gyllenhaal?
Gyllenhaal. The main, let me see if I can, because I'm mentioning Spider-Man. Let me just give us a Quentin Beck, Mysterio.
He was in the trailer.
Yeah, and if I remember right, it's like certain actors only pick something that kind of stretches them a little bit, or it's something they know they can do really well. And I'm like, he did, I don't know if he was good in this because I really didn't see it, and that's probably a bad example. But it's a sign of good actors or good directors know their limitations, know what they can do well and what they can't. And I'm like, he apparently this Jake Gyllenhaal or whatever. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but the thing is, like, he looks for things that can stretch him a little bit, but he's looking for things he can do well too. And I'm like, or things he thinks he can bring,
Okay.
something really good to the table on. And I'm like, as a director, as an actor, those are things that you have to be aware of, because there are so many times where you hear where someone turns something down, and like people who
Hmm.
turn things down being in the Matrix or being, in this because they were offered it. But the thing is that they probably had reasons, and if the problem is that you really had to bring something good, even though the directors and stuff, even the actor has to be like, it's just not my thing. I don't think I'm going to be able to bring it. I'm sure there's usually a lot of other things in those situations where they're not going to take a part, but as an actor, as a director, these are things that you have to know whether or not you're capable of doing. And sometimes you got to roll the dice, and I'm sure that's one of those situations on like the Star Wars and whatnot. But it was just like this one, this director did a great job. I'm like, he kept me entertained. This was a really good job with it. So I definitely, give him a thumbs up there. I'll give him 2 thumbs up. It was a good entertainment.
Two thumbs up for
Yeah.
Knives Out.
Yeah.
Okay, I know we're coming up on the end here, but
Yep.
so we spent most of the time talking about one mystery. I know I brought in Dracula and Roger
It was a
Ackroyd and stuff.
2.5 hour movie, man. Goodness gracious.
It was
we gave
very
it an
deep and
hour.
thoughtful too.
Yeah.
Deep and thoughtful too. But is there anything else? Any other mysteries you want to talk about?
Not really. I mean, I think it'd be nice to just give an homage to those who just came before. I know you were mentioning, I think your family has been watching Murder, She Wrote. Those are classics that I used to love when I was younger. I would watch them on television. So those were
I watched
really
them when I
good.
was a kid too. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember those were really well done. Sometimes even as a kid, I wasn't really guessing them. I mean, I know I'm into. My wife and I are into Father Brown mysteries right now. Apparently, those were books, and they've started to convert those into,
Chesterton.
yeah, turn those into movies right now. And those are, as a Catholic, it's just really neat to see a Catholic, priest portrayed on the screen. That's, you know, at least honest to a priest's character and is not over the top. Like,
Mhm.
so much happens in Hollywood. I mean, I really like the Father Brown character within Father Brown. He's
Oh
honest to a
yeah.
priest's character, or what a priest's
So
character should be.
with each kind of detective really has their thing. Like Sherlock Holmes, it's deductive reasoning. We just have to observe little details and figure out what fits all the details. With Agatha Christie, she has Poirot, who's all about the psychology of it. He's like,
Right.
I don't need to crawl around on the floor and pick up dust because I just use the psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Miss Marple, who she's a little old lady. She solves these mysteries, well, not like Jessica Fletcher, because she's been around the block and she knows people. So she knows, dear, what you did. And then with Father Brown, it's he can solve these mysteries because he's a priest, because he hears confessions. And so he knows. Like, people always underestimate him and assume that he's just this innocent priest who has, he's reads the Bible and doesn't know anything about the world. He always points out, well, I know I hear this in confession all the time.
Well, yeah, and that probably is a good. And so it's not that and just to clarify, it's not that the killers are coming to him during confession. It's just that he
No.
hears so
But
much
he
during confession.
understands. He understands the world. He understands
Yeah.
crime and sin because of hearing confessions.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
I wasn't following you at first, but then I was like, oh, I get what you're saying. You're saying basically, he's that's his education.
That's his thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I got you. But I was like, just to list off some, I'm a big fan of the comedy ones too. I like Psych and Monk. Big fans of those.
Those are fun.
I remember Pierrot, or I think you mentioned it too. Those were pretty good.
Yeah, Poirot. Mm-hmm.
Those were good as well. But those are probably the top ones on that come to mind. I'm sure I'm leaving one or two out, but those are the ones that I want to just say is like honorable mentions. As far as television type murder mystery type shows. So Columbo, that was also a good one too. I remember watching that one as a kid.
Did you ever watch Matlock or
Matlock? Yeah.
The Diagnosis Murder?
Was Matlock murder mysteries, or were they just mysteries? I forget. It's been so long.
Trials. I think they were.
No, trials.
Yeah, he was a trial lawyer,
Yeah.
and so I think most of them were murder mysteries.
I really enjoyed Matlock too. I agree. Yeah, Matlock was really good, but It was that one. I just don't get to see that
Be
one very
interesting to
often.
see if there was a trend, like which one kicked this off. I don't know which one was earlier.
Oh,
Probably Murder She Wrote. So Jessica Fletcher, Angela Lansbury, like the old classic actor playing
yeah,
Luth, and then Andy Griffith doing the same thing, and
yeah,
then
Matlock.
with Dick Van Dyke doing the same thing with Diagnosis Murder.
Yeah, I
So
remember that too.
it's a
Trying
pattern
to
that
think.
works for early afternoon TV in the 90s.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, yeah. It's hard to say. I mean, television's been around for so long. I mean, there's ones that I'm sure probably go back even further, maybe. But yeah, I hear what you're saying as far as how it was set off. Trying to
Well, the
think here.
earlier ones, I think the older you go, the more um, trust people have in police. So you have like police procedurals or mysteries like uh,
Hmm.
Perry Mason.
Sure.
Is he a police or detective or
He's a
lawyer?
he's a lawyer. Perry Mason, I think, is a lawyer.
Okay, so Perry Mason's more of a lawyer one.
Or was he a
Um,
medical? Or was he a doctor?
Dragnet.
Yeah,
There's Dragnet.
Dragnet. Yeah,
Mhm. So
but
I think the older ones are more like official people, whereas then later on, we get away from the police. The police are the ones getting in the way.
yeah, I mean, I think people enjoy the PI angle of it, and I think that's where a lot of people enjoy Father Brown because he's kind of like a PI. It's the same thing with Psych and Monk. They're private investigators basically. Um, you know, in this one, in the movie that we just watched, Knives Out, he's a private investigator working with the police, and the police is just kind of seen as like they just don't have the mental capacity to, I guess,
Mhm.
deal with it, which is a little
Mhm.
irritating, but it's like okay, sure.
Oh, here's an interesting comparison to make in the last 2 minutes here. So I watched Knives Out, and it's a movie where everything comes together and works pretty much perfectly. It's not, I guess, flawless. You can poke some holes in it maybe, but you have to think about it to find those holes because it's just it's perfect the whole way through, tonally perfect, and the plot really works together really well. I watched Enola Holmes.
Hmm.
That's like #2 on Netflix on the world right now. It was really fun. It tries to take on the same kind of style, I think, that quirky kind of staccato editing style, a little over dramatic, but fun. And so it's, I think, kind of trying to do the same thing in some ways. It does not nearly come off nearly as well. Matter of fact, I think while it had a lot of good things about it, I mostly enjoyed it. Uh, I don't know that I actually call it a success. It
Enola
was
Holmes.
Enola Holmes, yeah.
Okay.
So okay, so the premise is, Sherlock Holmes has a little sister, and
Yeah.
she's as much of a genius as her brother, and both her brothers, and their mom disappears for mysterious reasons, and she's on a mission to go find her mom,
Mm.
by while escaping Mycroft, who's trying to send her to finishing school. So that's the premise of it, and but the message of it is really, really a strong kind of smash the patriarchy, feminism.
Yeah. It's getting
Yeah,
a little tiresome these days. I mean, we understand. I think as a man, I think I get it, but I'm like, it's a little
yeah.
overdone.
Well,
It's too comes on too strong.
I can enjoy a movie that has a message I don't agree with. See
Hmm.
Last Jedi, but this one was really, really preachy. And
Yeah.
one of the techniques that they used for the quirkiness and audience engagement was breaking the fourth wall. She was
Oh.
constantly like talking to
Oh.
the camera, and it was a good technique. They deployed it well. Think I don't think it worked as well as they intended because I kind of got tired of it after a while. Like it
Mm.
was throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
Um, and certain characters would look at the camera and just like bring the audience into it. But I kind of got old, and I think it lended a little too much to the preachy tone of it, like the fact that you're actually talking to me directly as an
Yeah.
audience member,
As
and
people of
not having.
yeah, and as people of faith, we're around faith a lot. So when someone starts preaching, we can hear it. It's like we
Yeah, that's a good
know
point. That's a
when we're
good point.
being preached to. It's not really even meant to be mean spirited. It's not even that people of faith really disagree with it so much as that we know when we're being preached to. But some people who aren't as faithful or have who are used to being preached to, may not realize they're preaching without knowing it. And it's just kind of like you're preaching, and we know what preaching is, so no thanks. It's just like I
Yeah.
think it just turns people off. I mean, it's
Yeah.
negative. So
It wasn't this fun of a movie because it's a little
yeah.
heavy-handed in the messaging.
And
Though
if you-
the actress is the girl from Stranger Things, and it was
Oh,
fun
really?
to see her doing a speaking role.
Which one? The one that's the
Oh, the psychic one.
the second one. Okay, cool. I thought she looked a little
Yeah.
familiar. I couldn't figure that out. So,
Yep.
but I'll mention one more homage that I saw in the movie that we watched, and then we can sort of call it quits if you want. And basically, it was like there's a lot of, I mentioned the baseball one, but there was another one that was, I think, directly related to Psych that I don't know if too many people caught or anything. But there's a car chase, and it's I mean, I cannot tell you. Have you seen Psych at
I
all?
haven't. No.
I
It
definitely
sounds fun.
suggest it. It's super fun. There's a ton of references, like pop references, television, movies, things like that. People love it because of that, because it's like pop culture. But the specific thing that I think directs it directly to Psych is they're in a really tiny, underpowered car, and they're getting chased by a super powered vehicles,
Yes.
and that's a
Yes.
Psych thing. And
Oh, is
they
it?
drive around in this little Toyota Yaris, which is a really
Yeah.
small, compact. They call it, I think, the Blueberry or something like that. They're always driving around in it, and when they're in car chases and they're always having to act really like they're going super fast in this really tiny car. And it was just like I got that total Psych feel when I was watching this race scene within this movie, because it's like they're racing and they're obviously not going very fast, and it's just like kind of
They
like
call attention to that because she's flooring it, and then she barely gets up to 60, and then the cop actually says, "This is the dumbest car chase ever."
yeah, because
And
they thought
that's
they got away, and they convinced the audience that they thought they got away. And I was like,
know.
even I was convinced for a second, and I'm like, all of a sudden,
by like turning down an alley. I mean,
all of a sudden, it's
what?
like, open the door. I was
Yes.
like you said, that was the dumbest car chase. Like, where did you think you were gonna go? Do you think we were just gonna lose you? You literally parked right after you made the turn.
Right. If you go to the soundtrack, that's the title of that track, "Dumbest Car Chase Ever."
But it reminds me of Psych and stuff like that. So I think those were little homages, and you always try to pull from good shows or movies you've seen in the past. And I felt like they did that, so I thought that was neat. So it was another one I noticed that I wanted to mention. So fun stuff.
Nice. Like,
But
I'll have to watch that one.
yep, it's a whole couple of
It looks like
series.
it's included on Prime, so there you go.
Oh
You
yeah,
have Amazon Prime.
yeah. I definitely
That
suggest
one's-
it if there's one to watch. That one's really good. It's very current. Monk, I feel like um. Sorry, it's like I can't feel like I can go back and watch Monk, but I feel like I can go back and watch Psych.
Hmm.
They have theme episodes from time to time, which is kind of neat. Which are kind of based off of other movies and things of that nature. And
Mhm.
that one's they do a pretty good job with it. So near the end, it gets a little tiresome. And I'm not a big horror fan, and they do a couple of horror episodes. Not
Oh,
crazy
really?
about any of those, but most of it is upbeat, fun type shows. So definitely suggest it.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Well, I
Watch
guess we
Knives
should.
Out and Psych.
Yep, Knives Out. That is our, opinion. Take it or leave it. So, but yeah, it was enjoyable. I definitely suggest it. 2 thumbs up. And they should definitely, if anyone's looking to watch it, I would suggest it, because I was definitely hesitant because it had so many big headliners that I was like, I'm not really interested in, getting into, helping any big actors out. But I think this is one of those fun, creative projects they just got together and did. So I definitely suggest it. So, but well, cool. Well, we can call it quits from there. Thanks for everyone for joining us.
Awesome.
We appreciate it. We'll probably be back. And come join us on Twitch as well. And we're here on YouTube as well. So thanks for joining us. Subscribe and join.
Subscribe. Yeah, subscribe right here.
And goodbye from Wisconsin. And y'all take care.